start is, what made you decide on Genghis Grill? I mean, there were so many food concepts, for example. So, and I presume I take a leap of faith and say you're vegetarian. And Genghis Grill is a meat lover's paradise. So if you want to just touch on that.
I'm not a vegetarian. Oh, okay. Sorry, not to leap of faith. You know, we were young and stupid. So that was one of the, you know, that franchisor at the time was a small franchisor, and these guys can appreciate that. But so that franchisor's guidelines were not as hard as a larger corporation such as McDonald's when CC first tried to apply for a McDonald's, and so that's why Burger King was letting people in. So same thing. I mean, at that time, Genghis Grill was letting people in, and we fell in love with the concept. There's probably multiple concepts that any given person can fall in love with, but that doesn't mean they franchise, number one, and number two, that doesn't mean they'll franchise to you. So the lax requirements of a franchisee was the reason we actually got started in it.
But all of you have started food concepts. I mean, most people think, if you can eat well, you can also cook well. But really, food is very hard, tough business to be in. So, CC, can you touch upon how hard it is to, work a restaurant business?
Well, even though the panelists, most of them are, except Sanjeev, he has few non-food franchises. From carpet cleaning to landscaping, there are literally thousands and thousands of franchise systems out there. I'm a big proponent of franchising because I have done both. With all these things, in between, I opened my own independent restaurant called Red River Cafe. When I had this Burger King and Del Chico, I thought that I could do it all, so we opened my own restaurant. What I did is I went to Dallas, Tulsa, Kansas City. Me and all my managers went there and stole all these menus from full-service restaurants. Went back home with him and did all these menus, wrote our own menu, opened our own restaurant. Big mistake. We ran that for 2 years. We made money in the second year, but it is tough to run a freestanding independent restaurant because we have all this research and development, the marketing, all those kinds. Because if you are a part of the system, you get the leverage of the system from the franchisor. So that's why I'm a big proponent of franchising. Doesn't matter if it's restaurants, carpet cleaning, whatever it is. That's number one. Number two, a restaurant business, what's happening is if you come to a restaurant on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you see this line out to the door. And you say, oh my gosh, he's raking all this money. What is he doing with this money? But you don't understand that if you don't have a line out to the door on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we don't break even. Because Monday and Tuesday, sometimes we wish that those days were not existing. So that's one thing. Number two, it's a way of life. You work hard. Open to close. When I opened my first Burger King, I was the opening manager, I was the day assistant, I was the closing manager, I was the owner, and the franchisee. You do all these things. The first one. But the key, one of the problems we find is we stick with one store, two stores, you are buying a job. You can make a decent living. I don't want to throw out numbers, but the issue is you do need to expand to have a decent life. 3 or 4, you can afford a general manager, district manager, you can have an office, and then you expand. So the goal is multi-operations. How do you start one? Well, in my case, those days, I guess without the land and the building, we needed about $250,000. I didn't have all that money. I borrowed money from my brothers and sisters and cousins and all over because I could not get a loan at that time. Look, I was just a manager. So you start on one, then you create credibility, assets, equity. Because when you go to this franchise system, you have a system called the debt equity ratio. And of course, I use McDonald's as an example. It's impossible to get a McDonald's. I need to make it clear that they won't even get your application. You give an application legally, but it's almost impossible to get a franchise of major franchise systems like McDonald's, Wendy's, maybe Burger King, those kind of things. So it's a debt equity ratio is about 60 to 40. That means you have to have an equity of 40%. Now, equity of what? Land in the building is separate. The operations, the FF&E, we call it the furniture and fixtures, the training expense, franchise fee, pre-opening expense, and all those things. So 60 to 40 is the debt equity ratio. You can borrow 60, but you